Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Survive podcast. I am Joe, and joining me as ever in our panic room up in London, Chris Morris.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. The panic room is a little bit more echoey than our normal recording studio.
Yeah, which is good. It's a spacious panic room.
Yeah,
but we're recording in a new location today, probably for the last time because, as you can tell, if you're listening, it's quite echoey.
Yeah, it's 1 week only. Yeah, we're on tour.
Yeah, apologies for that, but the show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
And this week we're talking about Panic Room, the 2002 David Fincher movie. So 14 years old, and as it's 14 years old, you've had plenty of time to go and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But here's your final warning: if you do want to avoid the plot of Panic Room being spoiled for you, go away, find it, track it down. It's on DVD everywhere for about £1 probably.
Yeah, not even that. Probably.
Yeah, so go. It's worth watching. An enjoyable film.
It's a good film,
if a bit predictable. But so we're going to dive right in now with the plot recap. And then we'll talk about some key parts of the film, and then we'll dive into the eponymous How to Survive discussion and see how we would survive if we found ourselves in the panic room.
Yes.
So Panic Room tells the story of a mother and daughter. The mother is Megan, and the daughter is Sarah. And they've just moved into a luxurious new house in New York.
Mm-hmm.
The previous owner had installed a panic room.
Yes.
And on their first night, 3 burglars break in. Those burglars are Junior, who's their kind of leader, Burnham, who is a security expert. So he's basically been brought along because he's an expert in panic rooms.
Yeah, he installs the panic rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a third member, Raoul, who Junior seems to have brought along just because he's mental. Yeah,
or a criminal. He's like a career criminal.
He says he knows houses or something like that.
Yeah.
So a bit of a wild card. He wears a mask the whole time, and you're kind of wondering when's it going to kick off with this guy. He's very angry. So the burglars are shocked to find that someone is living in the house. They had thought it unoccupied, and they start to look around. Roused by their noise making, Meg wakes up from her slumber and heads over to the security monitor and discovers that there's people in the house. She runs across the landing and upstairs to her daughter's room, but that alerts the burglars that they are awake. They jump into the panic room, and there they take refuge. Burnham, being an expert in security, advises the others to disconnect the phone line, meaning that they can't call out from the panic room.
Sure.
So over the PA, Meg advises that they should leave because she's called the police, but obviously they know she's lying. So through the cameras, they basically sign to her saying, forget that, we want to come in.
Because the safe, so they've broken in to steal money basically, and it's in the safe in the panic room.
Yes, but that only becomes apparent halfway through the film. But they're not leaving anytime soon. They begin to barricade the doors. They're putting screws in the doors so that no one can open them. So even if they did escape the panic room, there's no way they're getting out of the house. To add insult to injury, Sarah, the daughter, is diabetic and seems to, when under stress, her blood sugar drops and she goes into shock. So that's a bit of a time factor.
Yeah. The cards are set. The burglars want in, the people want the burglars out.
Yes.
And Sarah needs her medicine.
Yes. Also, the burglars didn't anticipate the cameras being turned on, so they need to get into the panic room in order to destroy the video evidence that they were there. So there really is a high-stakes game being played. Yeah. After several attempts to beat their way into the panic room, Burnham has an idea. He goes into the garden, grabs the propane tank from the barbecue, takes it upstairs, drills through the air supply, and then starts pumping propane into the room. But Meg is a quick-thinking woman, and she does what anyone would do. She covers herself and her daughter with fire blankets and then sets fire to the propane, sending a fireball up the hose and basically turning the canister into an incendiary bomb, causing absolute chaos outside the panic room.
Yeah.
So as the burglars begin to bicker over why the plan failed, Meg sneaks out and grabs her cell phone, which had fallen under the bed. But she's unable to find a signal. She eventually decides to run the panic room phone through the main phone line to the house, which she gets by sort of reaching through the air vent. But the burglars get wise to her plan, and They run down and they pull the plug, but not before she's able to first call 911, where she's put on hold. So she hangs up, as you would, and calls her ex-husband, who is asleep, and says, she begins to tell him what happened, and she's not really sure if he heard the message. So, what will happen there? In the chaos, Junior, who was badly burned during the bombing earlier.
The propane incident.
Exactly. He decides, that's enough, I give up. I'm going to go home and await my inheritance. And we learn that he's actually related to the previous owner, who has stashed the money. On his way out the door, Raoul says, right, that's it, you toe rag, and shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
Unpleasant.
Twice.
Yeah, he really does for him. And as he does so, Stephen appears at the door, the ex-husband, and he's like, what's going on here? And for his trouble, he's beaten senseless.
Yeah.
He's basically, his well-being is used as a bargaining chip, kind of like, let us in the room or we'll kill him.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're definitely not coming out. So they start to beat him up. Burnham puts a coat over the camera, so you don't know what's happening. You assume the worst. Eventually, they bring Stephen's body and lay it outside the panic room. And Raoul goes and sits down in a chair downstairs. Realising the coast is clear, Meg runs out the room to get Sarah's medicine because she's now in full shock and unconscious.
Yeah.
She leaves the panic room door unlocked, and it turns out that the Stephen who was dumped outside the room was actually Raoul.
Who would have thought?
I know. He gets up and walks into the panic room, followed by Burnham, but a tussle begins over the gun that Raoul's been using. Meg is able to snatch it out of his hand, and as the panic door slams shut, it does so on his fingers.
And importantly, Meg is outside of the room, but Sarah and her medicine are inside the panic room.
Yes, with the burglars. So locked in the room with Sarah's unconscious body, Burnham has very little choice but to give her medicine because she'll die. He's actually quite a nice guy at heart. He's a family man. The reason he's doing this is to get money to help his family. So he helps with her help, with her guidance. He gives her the medicine she needs, and then drills into the safe and takes out the money, which turns out to be $22 million.
Ooh. 11 each.
Yeah, for the remaining burglars. They gather up the money and their fingers that have been lost to the door of the panic room, and they begin to make their way out of the house. But they walk into a trap that has been set by Meg. The formerly unconscious Stephen, the real one this time, has been propped up in a chair with a gun. He says, "You hand over my daughter, you chumps." And as Raoul's about to make his way across the room, Meg jumps out from behind the wall with a sledgehammer and hits him in the face, knocking him a whole story down. Unpleasant way to go.
Sledgehammer to the face.
Yeah, he lands badly, but he's not dead actually.
Yeah,
he begins to crawl back up the stairs, but Burnham makes a run for it. He's out the back, climbing over the wall, when he hears Raoul about to basically kill everyone in the house.
Yeah,
they're all screaming, help us, and he's like, oh man, I'm a family man.
Crisis
I'm a
of
nice guy. Exactly. He goes back in there, shoots Raoul in the head, but as he does so, the police arrive. He makes an escape out the back, but he's apprehended, and he's told to open his hands and show them, and lets go the $22 million, which blow away in the breeze. Imagine that. You'd be depressed, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's not gone to plan.
No, it hasn't. We finish the film on Meg and Sarah looking for a new apartment in the classifieds and discussing where's best to live.
Yeah.
With matching black eyes. So that's Panic Room. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I think I did. David Fincher is one of my favourite directors.
Yeah.
I don't think this is one of his best films.
No.
I think he has... I'm sure I read somewhere or looked at a list somewhere once before that said that David Fincher's films essentially is one good and one bad, and has been that way for his whole career.
Really?
So, like... Alien, he's had a few misses basically.
Yeah,
like
Alien 3. Yeah.
And I think overall, this is one of his misses. But I don't think that necessarily makes it a bad film. I just don't think it stands up
to his caliber.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is off the back of Fight Club.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, take away the cult following it's got, is a good film.
Yeah. And his other films like Zodiac, Seven, Social Network, even The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I enjoy it. Yeah, so I he's one of my favourite directors, and I think he does that sort of modern Hitchcock sort of thriller really well.
It's very much a David Fincher film. I mean, you can tell it's made by him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
it's a bit dingy, kind of industrial feel to it, I guess.
Yeah, like sickly.
Yeah.
I think all of his films always look quite sickly.
Like a damp alleyway. That's all his films feel like they're set there.
Yeah, and he does have some sort of like directorial tropes that always come up, and one of them is definitely like these sort of tracking shots that are enhanced by CGI,
which look very dated by today's standards.
Yeah, it's like
because I imagine 14 years ago when this came out, it was like, wow, what a spectacular shot.
Yeah,
but now it's like, oh, it's like a PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a bit. I think in some cases it works really well. Like there's a scene where Meg and Sarah are in the lift and it's going down, and you see a sort of through the wall shot.
Right.
So you've got on the right hand side of the screen, you've got the lift descending, and on the left hand side you've got Junior trying to pry open the door, and you see it all within one like nicely framed shot. I think stuff like that is really clever.
Yes.
Like use of CGI and sort of basic CGI.
Yeah.
But then like the incredibly intricate and ridiculous tracking shots where you're sort of gliding through like
the kitchen,
like the hand of a teapot, and like, do you know what I mean? Like it's a bit weird because it's so obviously not real.
I mean, he did that in Fight Club with like the IKEA stuff, so it was like exploding out to explain what's in the what it's made of. That works better than just trying to make it look normal, I guess.
Exactly. And he's not afraid to use CGI. I mean, like Zodiac, even that's probably like his most dour film. There's loads of CGI in that just to make like cities look like their 1960s selves, 1950s selves. And it's amazing, like, because it's completely subtle and you don't notice it.
It doesn't take you out of the film.
No, whereas I think in this instance it does, because it's so overt. But yeah, there's good and bad elements. But I think, while it's not one of David Fincher's best films, it is a good film.
Yeah.
And the concept, the high concept, reason we've chosen it, basically paired it with Green Room last week, and, two people being trapped in this place.
Trapped in a small space season continues on How to Survive.
Yeah, I think that, it lives up to its billing in that respect.
I do think it had some very tense moments. Like when she's reaching for the phone, for instance, I was like, oh my God, like it became unbearable almost. I guess like Hitchcockian, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is like an obvious influence.
Yes. But there are parts where it requires you to suspend disbelief to the point of actually destroying all disbelief, and with no hope of recovery of disbelief. It was stinking. That part with the propane explosion.
Right.
She's basically got her face in a vent which is pumping flammable gas into her face.
Yeah.
Lights it and doesn't have a scratch on her.
Yeah. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah,
like, but the bit that I found hardest to believe was actually when Raoul gets hit in the face with a sledgehammer,
falls down the whole story,
flight of stairs, but isn't even unconscious.
Yeah.
Like, she's just angry.
Whereas Stephen gets basically knocked unconscious for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And is like fine.
Yeah.
Perfect cognitive function. And then there is one other clanger of a poor decision made by a character which I don't think would happen in real life.
Yeah.
But we'll come to that later.
Okay.
When we talk about how we would survive.
Okay. I thought Kristen Stewart was ideal for the role of a belligerent teenage diabetic who's suffering through low blood sugar.
Yeah. Well, she still is.
Yeah, she's a method actor.
Yeah.
And she's been in the role for the last 14 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interestingly, when you're looking up Panic Room on Google, they have that like sort of, it's called the answer box on the side. It gives you like, maybe you'd be interested in this. Kristen Stewart's IMDb profile is ranked higher than Jodie Foster's.
Right.
So obviously she gets a lot more interest.
That doesn't surprise me, I would say. What genre would you say this film is?
Thriller.
Yeah, because I agree. Interesting that they advertised the film against David Fincher's wishes, trying to basically exploit his past work. And obviously the films that he'd done beforehand were sort of Seven and Fight Club. and he felt that it wouldn't appeal to the fans of those films because it's much more mainstream film, which it definitely is.
Mm-hmm.
And they also advertised it as the most terrifying film ever made.
I'm not sure I'd agree with that in any way.
No, it's
not even terrifying.
No, that was the part that was against his wishes.
Yeah, it's not meant to be scary, surely. I
No,
mean, there's
even
tense moments, but it's not like...
I assume the reason that they were going for that angle is the high level of potential empathy that you might have, like with this situation, like the idea of people breaking into your home at night is a very
home invasion.
But it's going some distance to try and say that it's
and I think that sort of trope, the home invasion angle, works when it's someone you can empathise with, right?
Yeah.
But when it's like a bratty girl and a stinking rich mother who just like live at complete opulence, like their house is in central New York, it's in Manhattan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's bigger than any house we could ever hope to own. It's a mansion.
Yeah.
And they're just like, fine, it's not, I don't know if it's big enough. So,
well, I mean, the thing
two people.
Yeah, the thing that makes me laugh about the film is that the panic room isn't even like a feature of why they're buying it.
No.
It's almost like an annoyance to them.
Exactly.
I mean, we'll come to this
gimmick.
a bit later.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about this when we talk about How to Survive.
It's like, my fridge does ice cubes. Oh, we got a panic room.
Yeah.
Oh, how cute.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
But it's like having the Kardashians and saying, oh, don't you feel sorry for them?
Yeah.
Oh, they broke a nail. I mean, I'm not saying breaking a nail is the same as having your home invaded and your ex-husband beat his half to death. But, it's harder to empathise with.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're not likeable people.
Yeah. I think they start... Initially, they're not. By the end, they are.
Yeah.
I think they're won over. But what about the panic room then? What was your... what do you think about panic rooms?
I like panic rooms. I have nothing against them.
Yeah.
This one has its flaws.
Yeah.
Basically, I'd assume they would build it so that even the person who installs it can't get around it. Otherwise, you're building if you're building flaws into it, as in FLAWS.
Yeah.
It's not a multi-tiered panic room.
Yeah.
But if you're building like weaknesses into it, it's going to end badly for you. Any system that has a flaw will be exploited eventually.
That's true. I mean, how can you build a flawless panic room though?
Well, don't put the air supply inside the wall for one thing, like behind inches of steel.
Behind the steel.
Yeah, that's one idea.
Okay, good. Yeah. So this is for any potential panic room designers who are listening.
Perhaps have a second phone line, or a phone line that can't be broken in some way. A satellite phone, maybe. Laser beams that go on the roof, and you can signal to someone.
It was installed by the previous owner, who's the wealthy.
We don't know what he did. He was a
recluse.
Yeah.
Presumably he's scared of people murdering him, like coming to murder him.
Yes.
Otherwise,
why would you have a panic room?
Yeah. Seems a curious one.
Do you think the safety features are up to scratch on this panic room?
What?
Because the one thing that they said, I don't want to have this panic room because what if I get my fingers caught in it? And he's like, don't worry about that because that's impossible. And then it happens. So
it's because they're not crossing the beam?
There's only 3 lasers.
Yeah, I thought that, yeah. I mean, it's a very specific scenario that comes to pass that means that he gets his fingers strapped in.
Still, it's a weakness in the system, Chris, and it's exploited. It's like everything,
exploited.
Everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, Murphy's
and
Law.
that comes to fruition multiple times in this film because of the poor product design on that panic room.
Yeah, I mean, you've trapped your fingers in a car door before.
Yes.
Imagine how bad that would feel. Because it's sort of like 3-inch thick steel door that's electronically...
He must have severed them.
Well, he picks them up.
Yeah. So how is he still attached? Just sinew?
Well, it's just crushed. They're like crushed off at the knuckle, presumably.
Yeah.
But his hand is still trapped in there, isn't it? It's not... It didn't slice them off, did it?
He had a torrid time, didn't he? Old Raoul by the end of it.
Yeah, I felt sorry for Raoul.
Speaking of that, though, I did think Burnham was going to get away, and I was like, it's all right, I'm fine with that, because
Yeah.
all the way through he's like, I don't want to hurt people, I just want the money, and you're like, well, it's a victimless crime, really.
I think
other than the people who are supposed to inherit the fortune.
I think there's a sort of an unsaid implication that his actions in saving the lives of the family will go some way into certainly, you know, redeeming him emotionally and, you know, spiritually. But you can imagine, you know, Meg standing up in court and saying, oh yeah, he, you know, saved our lives.
Multiple times,
yeah.
Although, why were you there in the first place?
Yeah, but then, you know,
I don't think the prosecution's going to struggle to put him away.
No, I agree, but just probably a more lenient sentence than, you know, it's on tape that he didn't take part in any of the murders and
True.
The single murder or the violent assault, and he could potentially argue that he was told that it was an empty house would have been a victimless crime, although he did try and gas them all, so I suppose that is essentially attempted murder, isn't it?
Yes.
Maybe it's not looking so good for Burnham.
In fact,
hanging's too good for him.
I hate him. He's the worst character. He's actually worse than Raoul. At least Raoul stood by his principles. So, on the phone to Stephen, Meg says there are 3 before it's cut off.
Yeah.
Did you know there are 3 Oscar-winning actors in this film?
Is this your weekly pointless IMDb trivia?
Yep. Well, no, this wasn't even on IMDb. This is my own knowledge.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Joe Sherville trivia.
Okay.
Should I tell you who they are?
Well, Jodie Foster.
For?
Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
3 cast members who are Jared Leto for Dallas Buyers Club.
Correct.
And Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
For The Butler.
Last King of Scotland.
Oh, of course, yeah.
He might have got it for The Butler. I don't know.
Idi Amin, isn't he? Yeah.
Was he the Butler? Did he get one for that?
Was he in The Butler?
He's in The Butler. He was The Butler.
Right.
So that's little aside.
Joe's
trivia hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, Meg calls Stephen and says there are 3 blah blah blah. So he goes, oh, something's wrong. Calls the police himself, then heads over. So then he gets the shit kicked out of him, rightly so, for being an idiot and going there on his own.
Yeah.
Then the police arrive, and she's like, oh, there's no problem, go home. Even though she could just, like, there's no sound, right? She's not mic'd up. The burglars can't hear what she's saying. So this is an early How to Survive tip.
Yeah. So
just say anything you want.
Yeah. So I've got, you know, as one of my How to Survives is, like, why doesn't she just
explain the situation?
When the police officer explicitly says, because he says, basically, if you're under duress, if you want to tell us something but you can't, you can
blink. Yeah.
Just blink, like, stick your tongue out, like, do a like ridiculous eyebrow movement, anything. Like, you don't even have to say anything. Just go like gurn face for like a second and go.
But the thing is, they can't hear us. So she can just stand there very calmly and say, look guys, there's actually been a break-in, there's 3 people upstairs, they've killed 1 man, my ex-husband's been beaten half to death, my daughter is having a diabetic episode, she's locked in a room with them, in the panic room. What I need you to do is go away and bring back as many people as you can, because I'm going to try and lure them out. Then at that point you break in, right?
Job done.
That's it, that's the film, done. Done. Solved.
Yeah, because you know, she's obviously worried about endangering her daughter, but they, as you say, they can't see her face and they can't hear her speaking.
No.
And so all she needs to do is for them to leave the house, which is what they probably do anyway.
Yeah.
If you know they realised that she was under duress, which they do anyway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have actually changed anything.
No, exactly. It's the most ridiculous thing. Like that is just.
She's basically relying on police officers' intuition.
Yeah. But she's not even then. She's just like, I'll handle this myself.
Yeah.
Because it's gone so well for her so far.
Yeah.
Why did the police show up at the end? Because right when Burnham kills Raoul, the police basically storm the building. Was that off the same incident, or did they just hear gunshots?
No, that was the same incident, because the police officer who's leading the charge is the one who was on the doorstep earlier.
How did he know?
It's intuition, isn't it? You can tell that he knows something's wrong, because otherwise he would just be like, oh, that's embarrassing for you, by.
But why send in like a SWAT team?
Because it's America.
But like, what possible, like, aside from the fact that a SWAT team was more or less needed, no, it wasn't. You needed like 2 policemen to come in there. By the end,
Yeah.
they send in like 15 SWAT members. But what possible situation would he imagine is happening in there to require that many people?
I think he's erring on the side of caution.
Well, we'll bring the army then.
Yeah, just bomb the house.
just like airstrike, drone strike them. Like,
just flatten New York because there's no...
because this woman looks a bit fishy.
Carpet bomb Manhattan because otherwise you can't be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's got to go on. He's either a very good policeman or just a mentalist.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the burglars as well.
Okay. So there's 3 of them.
Yeah. Burnham we've sort of discussed.
Yeah.
Raoul again we've sort of discussed.
Yes, the hothead.
Yeah.
Junior.
Well, let's seg into our namesake feature, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Because I would say that Junior is probably the most frustrating character in any film that we've covered, including the Friday the 13th films.
Really?
Yeah.
What, more than Jason?
Basically, I meant like the victims. You know, like because Junior dies.
Yeah.
So he's the only person, in fact, in the film who dies. So
no, he's not.
Oh, apart from Raoul, sorry.
Yeah.
The only but he's annoying. He's arrogant, feckless.
Yeah.
He hires the wrong people in that he doesn't know,
anything about
Raoul, and Burnham is a soft guy, basically.
Yeah.
He doesn't cut the right phone line. If someone says cut the phone line, he's just gone up to like the phone in the kitchen and unplugged it, basically. There's even the bit at the start of the film where it's revealed that the reason they're late in getting to the house, like as in the Altmans have already moved in when they've planned to burgle the house, is because Junior doesn't understand that escrow, which is the period of time, when the keys are in... Yes,
they're held by a middleman.
Party, before the new buyers get control of the property. He thinks that escrow... He says it's 14 days. And they're like, well, it was more than 2 weeks ago that they bought the house. And he's like, no, it's 14 business days. Escrow is always business days. And they're like, there's fucking boxes everywhere, mate. What are you talking about? There's a family in the house.
Yeah, we've seen them.
Yeah. Like, he's just... And he even has shit hair.
Yeah, he does. He's got the
terrible.
Dreadlocks,
it's
like
cornrows.
cornrows.
Yeah. I mean, Jared Leto is a beautiful looking man. But...
He's not looking his best now.
No. And he's just an idiot.
So you'd have shot him?
If I was Raoul, then possibly, yeah, because I mean he's going to jeopardise the whole operation, isn't he?
Yeah. But it is his operation. So let's just talk about Junior's plan for a second. So he was going to come in there with originally just with Burnham, and then he shows up with Raoul, and Burnham's like, "Who the hell is this guy?" So originally it was just going to be him and Burnham would go into this building, which was unoccupied, come in through the roof, go straight to the panic room, bust open the safe, and leave. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. Why did he bring Raoul?
Because Raoul knows...
But it doesn't make sense. Occam's razor, Chris. The simplest answer is always the best, right?
Yeah.
Why even tell Raoul? Who is Raoul to...
I think he's just muscle, isn't he? Because Junior's, like we said, like a little rat, basically. Isn't he? He's rubbish at everything, and he's weak, and he's a coward, and a brat. And you wouldn't back him in any sort of fight.
No.
So I think he's just high. It's like a class divide thing, isn't it? Because Raoul's basically sort of a white trash sort of guy, and Junior's clearly from a wealthy family, and he's just an impatient little twerp.
Yeah.
Can't wait for his inheritance. And he's basically gone, oh, I'm doing a robbery. I'm going to do a robbery. I know what I'll do. I'll hire some like low-level thug to help us with it. It's just... It's
right.
Like
so he's not like a friend of his?
No, I don't think so. I think he's like, someone who knows...
A hired hand.
Yeah. But basically, he's an idiot.
Yes. And... Yeah. He won't be joining us for the How to Survive Survivors Hall of Fame.
Absolutely not.
No. Burnham, however, maybe.
Yep.
He survived.
He did. So, what about you? Did you have any suggestions on how they might have survived?
Yeah, I did. Well, we've already discussed, obviously, tell the police.
Yeah.
When you phone 911 and say, look, I've had a break-in.
Yeah.
And they say, hold on a sec. They'll put it on hold 1 second. Now, I've never really had to call emergency services.
Yeah.
But I would assume if they say, hold please, they're connecting you as fast as possible to someone who can help. Mm-hmm. Now, you said Junior was impatient, waiting for his inheritance. Mm-hmm. I would say Megan is the most impatient person we've ever had to talk about on this show. Because, logically speaking, the most she'd have to wait is what, 5 seconds?
Well, she does wait 5 seconds, though, doesn't she?
Please hold. 2, 3, 4. She hangs up, then calls her ex-husband who's asleep.
Yeah.
But there's no logic to it.
His ex-husband and speaks to his new girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who is, by the way, Nicole Kidman.
I know, yeah.
So you think, what be more patient is your advice?
But if you've called the only person you should be calling in that situation is the police. Nobody else. Because you need the police, you need a paramedic because your daughter's about to have a diabetic...
Going to a diabetic coma, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you just stay on. Like, can you send...
Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead she doesn't take that chance.
Well, she did survive, Jay, in the end. But
we go for optimal survival here, Chris.
Yeah. I agree.
She takes a severe wound.
I agree the emergency services would have been preferable to...
It's poor old Stephen. He wouldn't have got
But we can't assume she'd definitely have got through.
Well,
there's
she
even a
time.
pointed remark at the start of the film where when looking around the panic room, the estate agent says, like, what are you going to do if someone breaks into your home? Are you going to call the emergency services and wait for half an hour for them to show up?
Fine, show up, but placing the call doesn't take half an hour.
No, true.
She has enough time to hang up the phone, dial Stephen's number, speak to his new girlfriend, who wakes him up. They have a brief argument. Then she speaks to Stephen, and that lasts however long, like 10 seconds. In that time, you could have been like having a good old chat with the emergency services, and listen.
Well, you couldn't because they cut the phone line.
Yeah, but in the time, you'd have been connected by that.
Right.
It's folly to think that you wouldn't have spoken to the emergency services in that amount of time.
I agree, but the rule of the podcast is that we can't assume. And the evidence in the film is that this is a universe in which the emergency services are particularly lax.
Or, by all accounts, over the top.
Or, it's one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why no one calls the police. It's because whenever they come with a full SWAT team to any disturbance.
Maybe. Well, she takes matters into her own hands by doing things like locking all the doors to force them down a single route around the house, and then like things like broken glass. She rigs her ex-husband's like
broken arm
into a shooting position, and she hits Raoul with a sledgehammer. My question is, why didn't she go further than this? And go full on Home Alone. Tripwires at the top of the stairs. I'm talking, butane torches, oil slicks, tar and feathering people,
marbles on the floor.
Exactly. Yeah. She's got she's in the rare position that all of her worldly possessions are to hand because they're all out in boxes. So why not take advantage?
Yeah.
And stage a proper Home Alone style assault on the people.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think we can criticise her too much because let's not forget the fact that she did properly smash Raoul's head in with a sledgehammer. Yeah,
it just happens that he's got some sort of genetic ability to not have brain damage.
Yeah, exactly. Not have his skull crushed under the weight of the sledgehammer.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, speaking of taking inspiration from movies, they're trying to, at one point, send a Morse code signal across through a gutter.
Yeah.
Or like a
drain pipe.
Yes, to the neighbour. She says, where did you learn Morse code? She says, Titanic. So in that vein, perhaps take another idea from Titanic. So this segues nicely into my next How to Survive idea, which is basically, so maybe she could take a leaf out of Rose from Titanic's book. And her sort of method of survival after the Titanic was to live a humble life.
Yeah.
She gave up all the wealth and all the...
Well, she gave up the opportunity to be married to whatever his name was, the wealthy guy, didn't she, basically? And led a life less focused on...
Materialism, yeah. She was just happy to live each day like it was her last, and live for the family. Not so the two characters in Panic Room, who, even in the end of the film, are still looking to get a bigger house.
Yeah, so this annoyed me.
They haven't learned anything, have they?
Well, this annoys me, the bit at the end of the film, when they're looking for a new house. Because it's almost like it's the house's fault.
Yeah.
It's like a haunted house film or something like, like if only we hadn't moved into that house. It's like, no.
If only we hadn't had a panic room.
If you hadn't been in that, if they'd broken into your house and it was a normal house, you'd have been fucked, mate.
Yeah.
In fact, all the way through the film, there seems to be a real anti-panic room sentiment spreading through. And I don't understand it, because at the start, especially, she seems to view it as like a bit of an annoyance. She's like fiddling with the instruction manual and she's like, can't understand it. And then she's like, oh, I've got to turn that thing off tomorrow. Like, I've got to, basically just not have it fit for purpose. Like, it's like an inconvenience rather than an obvious luxury.
Yeah.
Like, if I had a daughter who had a medical condition that required, emergency application of medicine at, semi-regular intervals, or she would die or go into a coma, I would put that fucking medicine in the panic room.
Do you know what I also put in there? Food and drink.
There is food and drink in the box that they, where they get the blankets and things. But that, put the medicine that she needs on a frequent and crucial basis in the room that you've got as an emergency backup. And why move in there if you don't like it? You're not going to be able to get it out of the building. You're not going to be able to have it demolished, taken back. What are you going to do? You just have your fucking laundry in there or something like that. It's ridiculous. Presumably having a panic room with an automatic sliding door and a safe and a bank of security monitors adds exponentially to the value of the property when you're buying it. So what's the point in going for this house if I know they're a property like this that comes up once in a generation and all this sort of thing, it's still going to add probably 20 to 30% on the cost of the property. Sure.
Well, money's no object, Chris.
But if you don't want a house with a panic room, don't buy a house with a panic room in it. Don't view it as a burden if you're going to get it.
And surely after what happened, they should say, well, if there's one thing we've learned, we should always have a panic room. Yeah,
exactly. The moral of the story is thank God for the panic room. And they're at the end, they're oh, do we need all that space? I mean, you should fucking thought about that 6 weeks ago, love.
Yeah.
You're insane. Don't fucking move into a house that's got a main feature that you find to be a burden and an inconvenience.
Good point.
And if you're in that house, make use of it and use it properly. They're not prepared. I know it's their first night and everything, but it's fucking ridiculous.
Exactly.
How many films do we watch where the main character would kill for the access to a panic room? And in this film, it's almost oh God, they're in this panic room, they're trapped. It's so terrible.
And the only reason it's bad is because the girl's got a disease.
Yeah.
But if she was fine, they'd have just sat it out and be fine.
If she had the medicine, nothing would have happened. The burglars have played their cards with the fucking propane. They're not getting in there again. Then it becomes daytime, and what are they going to do? Just try and wait them out?
Yeah. I mean, it's siege tactics, isn't it?
Yeah, but they've got food and water in there, and I guess they've got access to the outside world, but someone's going to get suspicious. The husband's going to come round at some point, isn't he?
Or the anyone.
People, the colleagues of the woman when she doesn't turn up to work, or the kid doesn't turn up to school and going to ask questions.
Eventually, someone's going to come around.
Exactly,
The postman.
That's the specific reason for having a panic room in your house.
Well, fair enough. So your advice for survival is don't be so down on panic rooms.
Yeah. For Green Room last week is called Green Room because they're trapped in the green room.
Yes.
And it becomes a sort of
prison.
Yeah, it's a prison cell for them. In this, the panic room should be their saviour.
Yeah.
It should be the saving grace.
They should be spending the entire movie trying to get to the panic room.
Yeah, they should be spending every minute of the film going, thank God we specifically moved into a house with an elaborate security system and a panic room in it.
Very good point. Another thing that, I mean, I originally came up with this idea thinking maybe it could be a good How to Survive idea.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked into it, it's not, but I'll tell you anyway.
Okay.
Because I think it's probably not the best way to survive.
Okay.
Having a fridge next to your bed.
Right.
Now I thought maybe it kicks out radiation. Nothing like that. But
okay.
Surely it would just be a nuisance. You know what I mean? Because her bedside table, the girl, Sarah, her bedside table is a fridge.
Okay.
Filled with Diet Cokes and waters and...
Right.
It's got her medicine in it as well.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's there. So I actually do have it.
Yeah.
So that's just one of the idea, one of many. But I did have one better one actually.
Uh-huh.
And for this, I'm going to turn to a website we haven't used before in the podcast, but it might come up again in the future. Swimuniversity.com.
Okay.
5 reasons drinking alcohol in a hot tub is a bad idea.
Okay.
That's the closest facsimile I could find to a bath. Because
Right.
their bath is massive.
Yeah.
And
those poor people.
yeah, she drinks like a whole bottle of wine
Yeah.
in the bath
Mm-hmm.
before she passes out. So she'd have been a much better survivor if she'd have had her wits about her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So number 1, extreme dehydration.
Okay.
Hot baths make you sweat. And even though you don't really feel it because you're in water, you're going to be dehydrated. That comes across, you know, she's a bit disoriented when she wakes up.
Mm-hmm.
Heat exhaustion. There's every possibility she's suffering from that.
Mm-hmm.
Symptoms are confusion and dizziness, fainting or fatigue, headaches, nausea, sweating, rapid heartbeat. She has all of those.
Hmm.
Passing out. She does that.
Mm-hmm.
She passes out in the bed. Broken glass. She breaks a mirror later in the film.
Yeah.
And
All the key points
yeah,
are coming up.
yeah. And number 4, drowning due to wild behaviour.
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't exhibit any necessarily wild behaviour and nobody drowns in the film, so I'll let her slide on that one.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of trouble could have been avoided if she hadn't drunk a whole bottle of wine in the bath at the beginning of the film.
Right. It doesn't have a huge impact on the events of the rest of the film, you'd have to
Well,
say.
she does get up to pee,
Yeah.
and that's why she first hears them.
Right.
So
That's
even
good.
if she's taken on too much fluid, she has to piss.
Yeah.
But that's not good, because they probably would have, like, snuck around the whole house, gone in, got everything, and left.
Well, they're gonna get into the panic room while she's asleep, and then
Drill the safe.
Drill a hole in the safe.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is, can you guarantee me that if she hadn't drunk the bottle of wine, that things wouldn't have gone better?
No, but we can't assume that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's all I've got. I don't
Yeah.
think that's all you've got.
Mm-hmm.
Well, perhaps we should wrap up there then.
Yeah.
And exit our panic room, head out into the wide world,
Yeah.
free at last.
Mm-hmm.
Next week begins our new season, a 2-week season on How to Survive.
Yeah.
This is parental guidance season. The first one will be Stanley Kubrick's classic The Shining,
Mm-hmm.
in which Jack Nicholson plays Jack Torrance.
Yeah, a doting father.
Yes. And then the week after that is a German movie
Yeah.
called Good Night Mummy,
Yeah.
which I advise you go and seek the trailer for.
Yeah.
Good Night Mommy in the American spelling.
Yeah.
Creepy stuff.
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Leave it you to seek out.
Looks good. And in the meantime, if you want to get in touch and suggest any films, any methods of survival, then email in. The email address is howtosurviveshow@gmail.com.
And that's exactly what James did. He says, "Hi, Chris and Joe. I've had some thoughts on how characters could have survived in Julia's Eyes." So you remember a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So spoilers alert if you haven't seen Julia's Eyes and you didn't listen to that podcast. Upon learning of her sister's disappearance, Julia should have booked a spa weekend, as she knows stress will damage her eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, truly speaking, she does go away for a romantic retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we have a sort of rule here that we don't want to change the motivations of the character, and her booking that holiday is very much in the with the express idea of solving her sister's presumed murder.
Yes, exactly.
So that would change. I mean, he's right in the sense that
it would have helped her survive.
having such a stressful, line of action that she takes undoubtedly contributes to her impending blindness.
But that's not to say that eventually Angel wouldn't have caught up with her.
Yeah.
So true. It's Watney's index again. It's a short-term survival, but maybe a long-term you'll die anyway. He goes on, the hotel caretaker could have survived by locking the door when having a bath.
Yeah, we sort of talked about that, didn't we? Touched upon him.
Yeah, he's
weird
exhibitionist.
Yeah.
Leah could have survived by choosing not to break into the house of a suspected murderer and trying to kill him. Good point. But again, affected by motivations.
Yeah.
And finally, Julia could have saved her eyesight and the killer's mum's eyesight by taking the knife from the drawer when she had the chance, concealing it, and then when they're drinking tea, throw the boiling water in his face and knifing him as he recovers.
That does seem like a decent tactic.
Yeah, like bring the fight to him.
Yeah, I mean she doesn't do anything with the fact, because she at this point in the film she can see, but he doesn't necessarily realise.
Yes.
So
yeah, well, thanks James for emailing in. And again, if you've got any thoughts, as you've seen, we do go back and talk about past films, so perhaps you've got some ideas on Panic Room, perhaps you've got some ideas for next week's The Shining. We want to hear them. HowToSurviveShow@gmail.com.
And you can also get in touch with us on Twitter. The Twitter handle is @HowToSurvivePod. And we also appreciate your reviews. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes or Google Play Podcasts or Acast or whatever app or method you use to download the podcast, let us know what you think, and we do read the reviews and we appreciate them very much, and they help us reach a wider audience.
Weirdly, we've actually lost a review. We've gone down a review.
Right.
I can only assume someone's deleted their iTunes account.
If you're listening to this, just pop your phone out, go to your podcast app, just leave a little review. It doesn't have to be long. Just say what you like about the podcast, what you don't like. Some.
Well, less of that.
Yeah.
5 stars.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't.
The language of love.
We don't listen to any 4-star or below. 5 stars is the only thing.
It's too damaging for our precious egos.
Yes.
And don't forget that episode 50, fast approaching, is our inaugural How to Survive Survivors Hall of Fame, in which we will induct one of the survivors from the previous 49 films into our Hall of Fame to be forever venerated for their survival skills.
So perhaps Megan, Sarah, Stephen, or Burnham from Panic Room could be considered.
Maybe.
Stephen doesn't strike me as a particularly good survivor.
Not a very good candidate.
No. But all will be decided in episode 50. So until next week, it's The Shining, we say adieu and mind your fingers on the closing door.